Greetings, Amnesty International. Instead of like writing out a huge email because there's a lot of information, I thought I'd make a video. Um, there's actually two videos that I'll put in the email, and I just wanted to explain what the situation is out here in Arizona. There's a complete breakdown of protections for long-term care patients. In 2002, the Audit General of the state of Arizona conducted an audit of our health services, and it was uncovered that there was hundreds and hundreds of very serious complaints of sexual and physical abuse committed against Arizona long-term care patients that were downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. Downgraded, dismissed without any investigation. There's been little or no accountability for that. That means there's high probability that the staff members that perpetuated these atrocities are still working in these facilities. There's a breakdown of protection from the governor on down, and it's not even being barely addressed. Uh, After that audit in 2002, Arizona Republic, front page. This whole system has failed. Graphic stories of long term care patients being raped and beaten to death. Graphic. In a series of stories, not just this one paper. It was like eight, it was a series of stories that there are dementia patients and other violent patients that literally get out of bed and beat and kill other patients. And then it's covered up, mostly covered up, staff members raping and beating patients, manhandling patients, abusing, neglecting, mistreating patients. I've seen it. I've seen atrocities that are a disgrace. Patients waiting all night long to be changed. Patients developing E. coli, MRSA, bed sores, rashes, infections, bloody blisters, and other very serious complications that landed them in ICU and straight in the grave. Patients, like I said, waiting hours to be changed, which heightens the probability of more uh, uh, symptoms and complications, which means in turn the need for more treatment, which makes more profits. So what we have here is we have an environment that doesn't have enough staff nights and weekends to create more problems. And the people in the industry, they'll deny it. There's how we're doing the best we can. We can't get good help. Well, you have enough staff during the week, but at nights and weekends, all of a sudden you have a problem where there's not enough CNAs to do the caseload. There's supposed to be 4 CNAs on a floor with 60 patients. Sometimes there's only two. So the patients that are coma, semi-coma, they're not getting changed all night long. And it creates a horrible environment. And now what's the deal here? All right. The deal is that the Audit General's 2002 audit, that and this series of reports is all the evidence you need. You don't need to conduct a full investigation when you've already had of it in a nice little package sent by Chaplain Paul to your organization. What needs to be done? You need to file a complaint with the Justice Department and then have your people shed light on this situation. Involve the media and shed light on this situation so that the entire nation can see how Arizona has failed. The whole system has failed from the top down. Now, I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a constitutional scholar, but I'm schooled enough to know that when a certain sector of society, and in this case it's long-term care patients, are not receiving same protections under the law as the rest of society, then that's when the United States Justice Department gets involved to come down to the states and run an investigation, clean house to better fix the problem so that sector of society is protected, same protections under the law. Well, we don't have that here in Arizona. What we have in Arizona is patients are brutalized and raped and beaten and neglected, abused, and mistreated, and there's no state agency that does anything about it, or at best, very little. All right. And these family members and these patients, a lot of the patients, they have no family. The patients where I go mostly are coma, semi-coma. They're on life support. They're on, dialysis. They're paralyzed. They don't have the ability to even file a complaint. They can't file a complaint. The only way that state gets involved is if there's a complaint filed. If the patients are unable to file a complaint, then how are they protected under the law? They're not. So what needs to be done? Well, there needs to be, like I said, a full investigation by the Justice Department. There needs to be an organization like yours, uh, you know, Amnesty International, that has the power and the people, the lawyers, to uh, to at least shed light on this, at least bring attention to it, at least contact our elected officials down here and put some pressure on them, because I've been doing that now for, like I said, over 25 years. I'm classified as uh, a Christian volunteer community chaplain serving in long-term care ministry. I've been a healthcare activist since the 90s, 96, 97, and I've been a community chaplain for 15 years. I've sat in ICU with patients that died because of mistreatment, neglect, and abuse. I've talked to the widows of the patients that have died because of neglect, abuse, and mistreatment. During COVID, patients were locked away for an entire year without any visits at all by clergy or by family, which was a violation of their human rights, civil rights, patients' rights, and constitutional rights under the Ninth Amendment. It was a violation. Nobody's talking about it. 98, I would say 98% of our elected officials, they broke their oath of office during COVID. They failed to protect our loved ones' rights, and the end result was a Holocaust, a healthcare Holocaust in the United States. That was the end result. And many patients that I love dearly died all alone in isolation. I fought day and night to reopen those doors, putting everything on the line. Now I have a huge credit card debt. I put everything on the line, and I played a key role in reopening the state of Arizona for visits. And I can prove that. And the deal is that I testified down at the state capitol. I've engaged our elected officials. It it falls on, I wouldn't say deaf ears, but they're in denial. A lot of them are flat out in denial. They don't want to address this issue. It's not a popular issue. If they were to go up against the industry, they would probably not get reelected, censored, ridiculed, and they don't want to risk that. So they're walking a tightrope of appeasement. They're trying to appease the industry while getting legislation passed. And at the end of the day, by the time they get legislation passed, it's so weak and so irrelevant that it does little or nothing to improve the safety and quality of care in Arizona long-term care. So once upon a time, there was segregation in America. And once upon a time, a man named Martin Luther King said, enough is enough. And what did he do? They started to contact their elected officials. And what happened? Nothing. And so what they took it to the next level. They took it to a movement with protests and using real tactics in order to pressure our elected officials to craft laws to protect people that were being discriminated against. Well, long-term care patients across this nation are being discriminated against, brutalized, raped, beaten, manhandled, force vaccinated, vaxxed. So I won't be able to put the flippant thing in. And there's no accountability, little or none. There's none. So this is my statement. And what am I asking for? Your organization. This is right up your alley. And like I said, in the email that I'm sending, you'll have this was okay. What This is November 26th, Sunday, November 26th, 2023. So if you want to look it up, call the Arizona Republic, get a back issue, or have it sent to you on an email. Sunday, November 26th, 2023. This whole system has failed. Senior care centers face little accountability when resident staff are sexually assaulted. All right. This is, and the front page is about an 85-year-old woman who was raped in the bed, had to crawl on the floor and write a note, as you see here, and slide it under the door because the door was locked. The staff had the door locked. So poor woman got raped in the bed. Okay. Eventually got enough strength to get out of bed, crawling on the floor, and put this under the. I mean, this is what we're dealing with here. Third world countries have better health care than the state of Arizona. All right. You know, these are our mother, our father, our sisters, our brothers, our coworkers. These are our children and grandchildren. And we're all next in line. We're next. Like I said, for a year, patients were locked away like animals without any visits at all. It is crucial that we have a constitutional right, a civil right, a patient's right, and a human right to have someone who loves us be by our side to protect and love us when we're sick and suffering in an American healthcare facility. Why? To make sure our medical wishes are being honored, to make sure that to prevent medical mistakes. How many times I walk in a room and a patient's laying there and throwing up and the staff is way down the hall, or they fall out of bed, or the IV pops out, or some other god-awful thing happens, and I go get the staff and prevent further complications. Well, if there's no family or clergy or volunteers in those rooms, then the patients suffer and die. All right, and that's what happened during COVID. Millions of patients, long-term care patients, died all alone in isolation. Millions were neglected, abused, and mistreated, and there was no accountability because there's no witnesses. Think about that. No witnesses because we're all locked out. No family member to change their loved one when they're waiting hours to be changed. And the family has the right. If my wife, God forbid, winds up in one of these places and she hasn't been changed for a couple of hours, I can assist, I can change her. My wife is, God forbid, someone I love is paralyzed and they need a drink of water. How many times I go in the room and I literally, because they're paralyzed from the neck down, you literally give them a drink of water or a cold washcloth, or you hold their hand, or you pray with them to calm them down, or you read to them, or you give them a hug or a stuffed animal. In my case, I started Stuffed Animals for Christ, and I bring stuffed animals into these facilities. So because they create peace, love, and joy, and comfort. And so are we going to stand up for our rights, or are we just going to continue to look the other way and pretend these atrocities are not happening? Here's all the proof you need. In the Arizona Republic and in the Audit General's 2002 audit, in that audit, there's a direct recommendation for the legislature to create a task force to go in and hold our health services accountable, and it still hasn't been implemented yet. There's other recommendations haven't been implemented yet. They had a Mickey Mouse hearing that I one of them that I testified at, and the interim director lied, misled the committee, and the end result was, well, instead of coming once a year, you come 3 times a year. Well, that does nothing to help ensure the safety and quality care for the patients. There was legislation that was passed. I testified for House Bill 2575, which allows all non-staff members of clergy to go in during a statewide pandemic, national emergency, that type of situation. And then there was another bill passed by Representative Wynn that allows family member. That's fine, but here's what the deal is. I called the sheriff's department and said, well, what if there's another pandemic and they don't let us in? What do we do? I got the law in my hand, but they don't let us in. What do we do? And the sheriff department says, well, they have to adhere to the healthcare facility and the health department for the safety and well-being of the patients. Well, I'm sorry. The safety and well-being of the patients is dependent on having clergy and family in there to protect them. Because without it, during COVID, the strategy was we're going to isolate the patient to protect them from the virus. My argument is, who's protecting the patient from other violent patients and from abusive staff? Nobody. If the staff can go in dressed out with a mask, so can one, you know, screened, healthy screened family member by appointment. They don't have to stay there 12 hours a day. They could say 6 hours a day. You could cut it down. Instead of two or three family members, you could do one at a time, but you don't just strip away that hope, strip away that protection. All right. That's what they did. It was an atrocity, and very few people are talking about it. So, Amnesty International, I'm not asking you, I'm begging you, get on the ball, shed light on the situation out here, shed light on the entire nation. That 98% of our elected officials, they took an oath of office to defend our constitutional rights, and during COVID, they didn't do it. They did not do that, and our loved ones wasted away and died, all alone in isolation. I want you to imagine how horrific it would be if, God forbid, someone you love got in an accident, was put in one of these places, and you were locked out. And you couldn't be in there to make sure that they're being cared for properly, making sure their medical wishes are being honored, making sure that they're receiving the right medication, making sure that they're being changed in a timely manner, making sure they're receiving the love and compassion and encouragement we all need in order to have a fighting chance for survival, making sure they're receiving the comforts of home and healthy foods that are homemade. This was all thrown out the window. So that's my video for now. Like I said, I'm going to put 2 videos. I'm also going to put the link to the hearing, one of them that I spoke at. I'm also going to put the link to the Audit General's audit, and and a picture of this atrocity. I mean, come on, man. What if this is your grandmother, raped in the bed while sick and suffering? There's no security, and the poor woman has to crawl on the floor. Not only that, the door to the staff was locked. She can't even get in there, so she has to slide a note underneath the door. In Arizona, there's no state agencies going into these places nights or weekends. There is no laws against patients waiting all night long to be changed. There is no laws requiring chaplains to be in long-term care facilities. They're required in prisons and hospitals, but not in long-term care facilities. There's no law requiring healthy foods. There's no law requiring a mountain of other things. But the fact of the matter is, their civil rights, patients' rights, human rights, and constitutional rights are being violated. Because when you have patients that cannot file a complaint, that don't have the cognitivity or physical ability to file a complaint, then there has to be a mechanism where state comes in regularly to walk them halls, come in with an RN and 2 CNAs, and literally check the patients to make sure they're changed. Literally check the patients for bed sores and other evidence of neglect, and go in on a regular basis with unannounced surprise visits, nights and weekends, walk those halls, and then if they find violations, they fine, jail, imprison the owners and staff that are committing these atrocities. Not what we have now. Oh, I'm sorry, there's not enough staff. I'm sorry, we're trying. I'm sorry. Well, I'm sorry is not good enough. So, like Pastor Sean, and he's on the homepage of my website, miraclesofkingman.com. Miraclesofkingman.com. I'll put that link below. And when you go on there, you hit the button, and you could see one of my hearings, and then Al, whose wife died in a facility all alone during COVID. We tried to get him in there, sneak him in there. At one point, we thought we'd get a cherry picker to the second floor so he could see his wife. And yes, like I said in the other video, they did have Zoom and other methods, but that's not the same as having your wife, your mother, your dad, holding your hand while you're sick and suffering. There's nothing like that comfort. You can't get that from Zoom. So that's my spiel. Hopefully you'll do something. Remember, Jesus loves you, and so do I. Talk to you soon.